From the Page of Wrestling wrap-up, July 1990, this issue drops us headfirst into a summer where World Championship Wrestling feels like it is tearing itself apart from the inside out. Because from the very first editorial breath, the magazine makes it clear that Capital Combat did not simply end a show, it detonated a war, and the fallout hangs over every single page like smoke that refuses to clear, with management scrambling to explain, justify, and contain what happened inside that infamous cage, while the roster fractures into sides, alliances harden, and the Four Horsemen shift from dominant champions into hunted men under siege. The opening editorial sets the temperature immediately, framing WCW as a promotion standing on a fault line, where Ole Anderson's alleged involvement in the cage malfunction at Capital Combat has escalated from backstage rumor to front page crisis. A woman has been suspended indefinitely, fines have been levied against the Horsemen, and yet controversially, no suspensions are handed down, largely because Sting and Lex Luger themselves demand that Ric Flair and his men not be stripped or sidelined, insisting that justice be delivered in the ring rather than through boardroom punishment, a decision that instantly turns what could have been a quiet disciplinary moment into an open invitation for violence. From there, the magazine dives deep into the Four Horsemen controversy, portraying the group not as the proud standard bearers they once claimed to be, but as a desperate, increasingly reckless gang clinging to power through intimidation, manipulation, and chaos. With Ole Anderson's role questioned, Flair's judgment scrutinized, and the entire faction framed as having crossed a line that even wrestling's unwritten rules cannot excuse, especially as the issue addresses the racial controversy involving referee Rocky King, Junkyard Dog, and Thunderbolt Patterson, making it clear that WCW is drawing a hard boundary between heat and outright unacceptable conduct, a tone that marks a noticeable shift in how the promotion wants to be perceived heading into the 1990s. At the emotional core of the issue is Lex Luger, whose story reads like a tragic case study in loyalty, sacrifice, and betrayal, as the magazine details his severe staph infection prior to Capital Combat, his hospitalization, the explicit medical advice warning him not to wrestle Ric Flair, and his decision to compete anyway for the World Heavyweight Championship, only to be systematically dismantled by the Horsemen in a 3-on-1 assault that targets his knee, leads to emergency surgery, and briefly removes him from television entirely, transforming Luger from the total package into a symbol of everything the Horsemen have corrupted, and setting the stage for a revenge arc driven not by ego, but by a deeply personal sense of injustice. Sting's role is presented as equally vital, positioning him as the moral compass of WCW, the man who refuses to let championships be vacated or handed down by decree, who stands beside Luger not just as a tag partner or ally, but as a standard bearer for how victories should be earned, emphasizing again and again that July 7th and the Great American Bash are about restoration, not retribution, and that the Horsemen must be beaten, not banned, if WCW is to move forward with any legitimacy intact. That philosophy crystallizes in the formation of the so-called Dudes with Attitudes, a fan-coined name that the magazine embraces as Sting, Lex Luger, Paul Orndorff, and the returning Junkyard Dog unite with a singular purpose: to end the Horsemen's reign of gang tactics and backstage intimidation, supported by veteran voices like Mr. Wrestling 2 and Thunderbolt Patterson, creating a coalition that feels less like a traditional faction and more like a moral uprising, a line drawn in the sand between individual competition and systemic abuse of power. Paul Orndorff's return is framed not as nostalgia, but as necessity, a veteran enforcer who believes wrestling must be fought face to face, not 3-on-1, bringing credibility and menace to the anti-Horseman cause, while Junkyard Dog's comeback injects the entire movement with emotion and memory, his mere presence rattling Flair enough to earn a title match at Clash of the Champions 11, positioning JYD not just as a challenger, but as a living reminder that the Horseman's arrogance has always had consequences. Adding another layer to WCW's shifting landscape is the arrival of El Gigante, introduced with awe and spectacle as a 7'7" barefoot giant from Argentina, trained in the same system as Lex Luger, personally endorsed by Ted Turner and marketed unapologetically as a hero for children, a towering symbol of hope, designed to counterbalance the Horseman's cruelty with sheer scale and wonder while simultaneously teasing a new era of attraction-based wrestling aimed at a broader audience. The issue also widens its lens to spotlight incoming forces like Big Van Vader, hyped as a terrifying overseas monster set to debut at the Great American Bash. The return of Stan Hansen with his reputation for unchecked brutality, the raw power and athletic promise of Doug Furnace, and the volatile ego of Buddy Landel, each presented as pieces of a roster in flux where dominance is no longer guaranteed and every established name faces new threats from all directions. Long-running feuds continue to burn, most notably the Rock and Roll Express and the Freebirds, whose strap-laden warfare escalates beyond traditional tag rivalry into something closer to sanctioned chaos, reinforcing the sense that WCW in this moment is less about clean resolutions and more about survival in a company where grudges no longer cool. Even the merchandise section becomes part of the story, as pages of Sting masks, Luger shirts, Steiner Brothers gear, Road Warriors apparel, posters, buttons, and mail order forms capture the consumer heartbeat of early 1990s wrestling culture, reminding readers that while the ring is full of conflict, fandom itself is booming, loud, and deeply invested. Personality features like the profile on Tommy Rich ground the chaos with reflection, revisiting his historic NWA World title, win over Harley Race, and humanizing a locker room veteran whose career bridges eras, while championship coverage cements Doom's reign as World Tag Team Champions under Teddy Long's confident, provocative leadership, framed as both historic and defiant in a company redefining its identity. Letters from readers close the emotional loop, overflowing with outrage directed at Ric Flair, passionate defenses of Luger and Sting, and raw reactions to Capital Combat as wrestling wrap-up positions itself, not just as a reporter of events, but as a moderator of fan anger and expectation, steering the narrative toward the promise that the coming summer will not merely settle scores, but reshape World Championship Wrestling itself. By the final pages, the message is unmistakable. WCW is standing at a crossroads. The Horsemen are no longer untouchable. Alliances matter more than ever. And the Great American Bash looms not as just another supercard, but as a reckoning, where the future direction of the company will be decided not by fines or suspensions, but by who can still stand when the dust finally clears. See you next time. Farewell from the Empire State. This is From the Pages.